welcome to Between Two Studs. I'm Alex Stud.
And I'm Ron Stud.
And today, I think I say this in very positive terms. We're going to get a little nerdy. Right, Ron?
Yeah, time to bust out the glasses and pocket protectors because we're going to have a good time. We're going to have some awesome discussions with a friend of mine, and I think it's going to be a good episode. So with that, let's kind of kick things off. Let me introduce Mark Stong. Hey, Mark.
Hey guys, thanks for having me here, and I appreciate the nerdiness. I don't know if it's going to be that bad, but I think it's really nice stuff.
Oh, well,
I think it makes me look cool.
We mean it in the best possible light.
Yes, we're excited for it. You know, Ron
As
and
long as
I
you clear that up.
Ron and I, we have our nerdiness as well, for sure. I mean, we've done everything from 40K to D&D, and I have a feeling, Mark, we're going to be talking a little bit about comics today. Am I right?
Oh, quite a bit. So, I guess so your friends can know my specialty is in anything pop culture, comics, movie related, art, sketches, conventions, the personalities in the comic industry. I've met them all. I've done it all. I've been part of it all, even coming to flipping comics to collecting them, you name it.
Well, I love that introduction. So I think that's really where we can start. How do you know us? How do you know Ron?
Well, Ron had the good fortune of meeting me in an interview and hiring me up at Comcast corporate in Philly. Yeah, went on from there.
The rest is history.
Yeah, pretty much.
Now, Mark, you've told us that you do like comics, but what else? Tell us a little bit more about yourself. What are some other things about you that make you unique and that you're interested in?
Also a gamer like you guys. The big aspect for me is I'm a family man. I have to do that balanced life between my family, conventions, work, and comics, my hobby. I don't know if you guys have any hobbies that could just envelop your life. This is one of them for me. I'm glad I have a smoking hot wife and that she appreciates it because she's not into them like I am. She used to go to conventions with me before the kids, but she slowed down where I can't wait for them to start up again. But that's all that makes me me.
Unfortunately, it seems like a lot of the best habits and side projects are very expensive ones.
Yes.
So they definitely become something you have to really love and treasure to keep them up.
A word of advice for any of the people listening that want to get into comics: collect what you like, and don't spend your paycheck on it. I've been there. I've done it. You got to do that fine balance of know when to hold them and when to fold them. That's what it comes down to.
So I do know, Mark, we are recording this sometime in the early afternoon, but we always ask our guests, "What are you drinking?"
Right now, since I just got off work a little bit ago, it's just iced tea, just green tea.
Not bad.
Sometimes, occasionally, I'll and this is weird. I'll get some kind of raspberry or peach tea, and I'll mix in some bourbon. I know it's weird.
Hey, you do you. The big question is it Wawa tea or not?
Oh, hell no. I'll do Lipton. I'll do some real stuff, not the Wawa crap. I love Wawa, don't get me wrong, but I can't do their craptacular teas. When you touch the bottle, they stick to your hand for a week.
And Alex, what are you drinking?
You know, it's only 2:30 in the afternoon here in Chicago. I was very tired before this got started, and so I was finishing off a Monster Energy drink. So I'm actually not drinking an alcoholic beverage either, but I do have plenty of caffeine in me right now. What about yourself, Ron?
It shows.
So I'm going to start off with some Malort, just because it's Malort. And Mark, this is a bit of a tradition for the show. We definitely embrace Malort. Someday we might get them as the unofficial sponsor, but I've got some Malort, and then I've got some Evan Williams single barrel that I'll be tipping into a little bit as the episode goes on. So cheers.
Mazel tov.
Cheers. So, Mark, this might be a particularly difficult question for you because of your hobby. But, do you have a piece of art that somehow represents or speaks to you? We tell all of our guests it can be anything. Can be a song, can be a movie or a book.
Yes.
Oh, maybe you have an answer right away. Okay, tell us what that is.
I'm looking at it on my wall right now. So, my favorite comic art or cover of all time was Uncanny X-Men 141. For those not familiar, that is the famous cover with Wolverine hiding, I think her name's Sprite, it's been a while, behind him. And on the wall behind him is a poster that's lit up by sentinels. And it's basically a deceased or apprehended or free of all these different characters. And it's basically, what storyline was that?
It's Days of Future Past, right?
Thank you. I just blanked on it. Yes, that is my favorite cover of all time. I got mine signed by Stan, Jim Shooter, the editor, Chris Claremont, the writer, Herb Trimpe, creator of Wolverine, Louise Simonson, also writer, editor, and you name it, they're on there. But piece of art that stands out to me is one I just commissioned from a guy over in Malaysia named Florin Cuvas the Fourth. He's not known. He's just a guy who does art on the side. I had him recreate that cover, but with Wolverine and X-23 instead of the other character, because X-23 is one of my favorite characters, and I got to choose all the characters on the poster, on the background, like apprehended or not. Like I have Cyclops there, but I really try to sit there and think what characters would have survived a Sentinel Holocaust or a Sentinel overtaking of the United States. So I have the Hulk surviving on there, Apocalypse, Gambit's one of my favorites. So I had to throw him in there. I even added a little nod to like Star Wars with Boba Fett, V for Vendetta, and it just goes on. And the one thing he does as an interesting artist is why I liked him is he pans out from the original cover and he added 2 Sentinels off to the side ready to go in for the kill, where you don't see that on the original cover. That's
Very
the art
cool.
that stands out to me. I kind of did the layout for it and he did the real work.
That's really cool. Mark, before we get underway, because that's always the intro round, right? We have to know the background. Before we get too into the weeds here, I am very curious to know, you showed us your wall earlier. I mean, you have probably thousands of comics and other, comic related paraphernalia. How did that get started? I mean, were you reading comics as a toddler? What was your progression?
I was literally having this conversation last night, and it all started with a single card. Now, my brothers growing up, they were into baseball cards, football, you name it. I never got into that. I love sports, don't get me wrong. I just never got into that kind of collecting. So one of my friends lived around the corner from me, had Marvel trading cards, and he gave me one, and I happened to get Sleepwalker. So a guilty pleasure of mine is the character Sleepwalker. We don't see him too much in Marvel comic. I doubt we are if we see him in movies or anything, but that card just resonated with me. And then I started collecting something called Marvel Masterpieces, which is another series where famous artists would do oil paint canvases like their best work, and just make them into cards for kids to trade. Ironically, right now those sets are going for like $300-400 when they weren't worth 20 cents a year ago. It's insane.
Wow.
But it started there. Then I'll never forget, I got my first comic, I think was New Gods 37, the final issue, and Jack Kirby got me into it. I don't know if a lot of people don't know Jack Kirby. They know Stan Lee, but when you say Jack Kirby, people look at you like you're nuts. He created the Marvel Universe. I'll say Stan Lee had some good guidelines, but Kirby created it. And after that book, and witnessing Kirby's art and the cool characters, it just spawned from there. And then, whatever comics I can get. I had a store near me when I was a kid. I was lucky enough to have that, and it just took off.
So just as all comic book heroes start and one day get their superpowers, your superpowers came about from a single card. Am I hearing that right?
Yeah, pretty much. You're making me sound better than it is.
I love it. We've got the origin story. Now let's dive into some of the nitty gritty. What's your take on comic book movies in general? Has it helped the industry, hurt the industry, or has it kind of been a bit of a sideshow?
I love this question. I get this all the time from people who know nothing about comics or movies and look at me and think, wow, he's weird. He must have some kind of insight into this. Listen, I don't care. You love him or hate him. It could be a crappy movie like Catwoman all the way up to Avengers Endgame. I love them all. And that's not an exaggeration for a show or anything. When I was a kid, and you guys were kids, if you were fans, you didn't have any of these movies. You didn't have any of these shows. You had one of my favorites was Dolph Lundgren as the Punisher. I mean, that was a Punisher movie. There was a bloodbath. I'm sorry, 80s gore. It was great. People mock it today. It's like, I'm sorry, it was gold. Lou Ferrigno was the Hulk, which I was not a fan of, but at least we had the Hulk. They even had Thor in that at one point, and Daredevil. That's what we had. So today, for all the people that complain, like, oh, this movie was horrible, be grateful you have that horrible movie. We didn't have that as kids, and I don't think it hurts the industry at all. It saved Marvel, to be honest. So, you guys have seen Blade in the Blade trilogy?
Yes.
A lot of people don't know this. Blade saved Marvel Comics and comics in general. They would not be around today without that movie. In the 90s, Marvel was going bankrupt. Literally, Chapter 9 on the doorstep. Well, they decided to get that movie off the ground, and it actually brought in some serious bank for them. I don't know the exact numbers, but it was enough to keep them afloat. And hey, other studios can buy your characters. Maybe we can get lucky. So that's something they did to stay alive before leading into X-Men in 2000 and Spider-Man in 2001, which made them blow up. problem was, as you know, that makes an issue down the road later. Well, I'm sure we'll talk about later, where you sold off all your characters, you're huge, but you're not getting enough profit to stay afloat. That was going to the studios that own those rights instead of Marvel itself.
And don't forget the other big problem with Blade, which was the fact that Wesley Snipes had a huge tax problem afterwards.
Not that wasn't the only problem. He was drunk on every set. People hated working with him in all those movies. I'm surprised he got 3.
Yeah.
But hey, he made it big. He's in Coming to America 2 soon.
So, Mark, I really actually appreciate and respect that response, because I think I would totally understand from your point of view as someone who knows so much about comics and seeing these movies being made, which I hope no one takes offense to this, but they're popcorn flicks that are meant to sell seats, right, in the theater, and are going to sell DVDs and now stream on Netflix or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so they're kind of appealing to the lowest common denominator in terms of education and knowledge of the origin stories of these comic book characters. I mean, I remember just having a conversation like a week ago with someone who didn't understand or had no idea that when the X-Men were being created in the 60s, right? That was, in a lot of cases, that was talking about and making parallels to being gay in the United States in the 1960s, right? It was very much a parallel to social issues that were taking place.
I was going to say, much more than gay. It was being a different race. It was being gay,
yeah.
A different religion. It was everything.
Right.
And it was really, really smart, I guess, financially, and just a great idea to really rope everyone of every scope that you're trying to reach in.
Right. So, and I look at like the X-Men today, and I would say, okay, for people who just watch the movies, do they have any idea the actual origin and the social commentary that people like Stan Lee were trying to impose in his art?
I want to say absolutely. I mean, look at the social environment we're in now. Everyone is sensitive to everything. I mean, you have cancel culture, you have everything going on. I would have to say yes, and I think that's why it also blew up, because, I mean, growing up, I was a chubby kid. I wasn't going to be the next Superman looking guy. I wasn't going to be, but the X-Men let anyone in, and everyone felt comfortable that way. I really do think that they got that message from the 60s that Stan and Jack put across.
So you think movies today still are able to reflect that in that art form is cinema?
Absolutely. I mean, again, look at the first X-Men movie. You had Rogue, made her boyfriend, took his power or his memories, everything. He shriveled up. Oh, she felt like an outcast. Everyone was shunning her. She ran away. Everyone in their point of life has felt that way. Everyone has felt alone. And she ran away and got found by the mutants. And hey, you belong here. So whatever differences, I think it really got the question along, or the point across. Sorry.
No, that's a good point. There's got to be some lowlights. I understand. I understand that,
I can tell
that you respect the whole. It's better to have a crappy film than no film at all. But tell us some lowlights within the Marvel Universe film series.
Okay.
About the last Fantastic Four movie.
You're gonna hate me. I actually enjoyed that.
Oh.
I'm just going to express why I enjoyed it. It was a different take. It was a bad script all around. Dr. Doom was nothing like that. A lot of people, and I hate this, a lot of people complain that, oh, he's not related. He was of African American descent, and he should be what? I don't care about any of that, because I mean, the movie was bad, yes, but I enjoyed the acting. Actually wasn't bad. Sometimes they get hot actors that go in here, like the top-notch ones, and they're not bad. You just got a bad story. And there's actually a lot behind that movie that blew up. For example, the director was a recluse who wouldn't leave his apartment. He trashed it. He's being sued by the hotel and the studio for delays on the movie and destroying the hotel, several rooms. So I can understand why that one took a dark turn, that movie. If you're going to ask me which movies I think bottom of the barrel, Ghost Rider #1. Either Ghost Rider. 2 had a step up in effects, and I think we saw actually a little more Ghost Rider, because in the first one, if a battle started, it was over within seconds, and all he did was wave a chain or drive with his motorcycle. It was bad. Or the penance stare. Suicide Squad. I was a big fan of that book growing up, and they didn't come close to even making it accurate at all. I mean, there was very little enjoyment in that movie. But again, I'm still happy to have seen it. That just felt like, hey, let's put Harley Quinn in a movie. This is a Harley Quinn movie, and I'm a fan of Harley Quinn, and she was perfect. Margot Robbie fits the bill, but I expected more out of that. I can literally think of two more, and everyone says the one. I'm going to give you the one no one remembers or expects. Superman 4, Quest for Peace. Garbage. Absolutely horrible movie. But again, Christopher Reeves was great. I think that was his directorial debut. I could be totally wrong on that, but I think for Superman it was. It was not entertaining or good at all. It was bad.
Well, you know what's funny is I've never seen that movie, but my only acknowledgement of that movie is when it's referenced in Office Space. And they go,
yes.
our whole scheme. It's like Superman 4.
Actually, that was Superman 3.
Oh, was it?
That was 3 with Richard Pryor. And he was doing the whole thing of, as I did in Office Space, steal the penny, whatever. It's really worth this. But a side note with Superman 3, a lot of people don't know this. The villain in that became like a little robot at the end, I didn't know until a few years ago. That was supposed to be Brainiac.
Oh.
I never put that together until I read it in a couple sites and everything. I was like, I'll be damned. And the last one everyone trashes is between Catwoman, which is garbage, and Daredevil. And I'll be honest, I enjoyed Daredevil. Sorry, Ben Affleck was a good Daredevil. Forget the gentleman's name for Kingpin. It was a good twist. He did great. I don't know. I'm not the audience. They just didn't like it.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Like Ron and I, we grew up watching Saturday morning cartoons, and
of course,
and we would watch Iron Man. And Iron Man, when I was a kid, was my favorite superhero. And when I was growing up, people always kind of laughed at me a little bit, like that was a B-list superhero. And then all of a sudden, the movies came, and now Iron Man is. It's like he's next to Spider-Man, right? It's like a super. How do you feel about that? Do you feel that's a good thing for the industry? Is that a bad thing? What's your take?
Anything that takes off is good for the industry. I mean, it'll sell the comics. It'll keep people coming. There's a thing in comics. You have two factions of collectors. You have old school, and you have the rookies, the new guys that are just coming in for the first time. Oh, I'm going to pick up all these first appearances coming out this week, or this book's hot right now. It's like a $10 book. Then you have the older collectors that go, well, if it's not a first appearance of Wolverine or a first appearance of the X-Men, I don't want to see it. What both sides seem to not remember is you're not going to have those books. They're not going to mean anything if the new rookie people coming in to collect or are interested are going to be interested. They need to go and get the new stuff, or you won't have the old stuff. For example, if you go out and buy a first appearance of a character that came out today, you got to remember, if he or she kicks off in 20 years, that book can be worth money. That's what everybody seems to forget. So the more we have, the better. Going back to you with Iron Man, I remember that cartoon. I am Iron Man. It was great. It came on, I think, before Fantastic Four.
Yes.
Yeah. I like Fantastic Four more because I am not an Iron Man fan. I love Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man. I've never been a fan. I mean, my wife got me the arc reactor prop from the first movie. It says, proof Tony Stark has a heart. And I got it signed by Stan Lee. That's sitting up on the display I showed you. But anything else of Iron Man, he is Batman with less morals. I don't know. That's just my opinion on it. It's my opinion.
I've never heard that comparison, but it actually, I can't even refute that.
No.
Yeah. He's got a runaway budget that he can spend on whatever. He basically gets to do what he wants. And
he doesn't care. He'll kill you too. He doesn't care.
Yeah, but he does seem to be more monogamous with Pepper Potts, right?
No.
Well, I was going to say,
not in the comics. In the movies, yes.
It depends.
In the movies, yes.
I was going to say it depends on which adaptation in the comic books.
Exactly.
I remember, and I don't know the actual names like you do, Mark, but I know in certain adaptations he was a womanizer. In certain adaptations he was an alcoholic. He had a lot more dark weaknesses that are reflected in the comics that I don't think are is reflected in the movies.
His darkness really kicked in the 80s, and it was Bob Layton and I think Dave Michelinie. I could be wrong with that writer. Dave Michelinie is known for creating Venom. That's his claim to fame with Todd, but he did a lot of other works, and one of them being Iron Man run in the 80s and 90s, where he did the storyline Demon in a Bottle. That's where he had his alcoholism and womanizing and all that. I know they tried to clean that up in the 90s, not too well. I know certain artists like Eddie Granov took over and did the Extremist storyline, which was amazing. But the movie transition to that storyline was horrible, which was Iron Man 3. Sorry, that's one of those movies. I was not a fan of Iron Man 3.
Mark, I know you've mentioned Stan Lee, the late Stan Lee, a few times. And I know you've met him multiple times, especially on all the conventions that you've worked on and done various things with him. Tell us
Yes.
a little bit about your experience with him, and I guess maybe a few kind of just observations or thoughts about him and what
Oh yeah.
his contributions he's made.
Well, let me start it off by saying he is how he seems on the screen, at least with his fans. I don't know the man personally, like, I went to his barbecue last week. No, I did have communication with him since 2001. We were actually pen pals. We would email back and forth. I won't put out his email on here, say, because obviously he doesn't have it anymore, but I didn't want people, flooding it or anything who listen to this. But great guy. I would ask him all these questions. One of the one that always resonates with me was, and at the time, this was probably 2010, 9, what his favorite cameo was. And I'll never forget, he goes, "Oh, that'd be Thor movie, the first Thor movie." He goes, "I thought that was hilarious driving that truck. And I really thought I could have had a shot at getting that." It was cheeky. It was like his answers back. But my first time, well, actually, the reason we became pen pals is thanks to, I don't know if you guys know Joe Quesada. He
Mhm.
basically runs now all of Marvel in terms of animation studio, and I don't know how much aspect he has into TV shows or movies, but he did a lot of art in the 90s, the 2000s. He really made his claim to fame with, I think, Origin and a bunch of other titles. I mean, he just blew up, became the editor of Marvel. But I met him at a Philly con, I think it was 2001, and I said, "Is Stan ever going to come out here?" Because I never saw him, nothing. He doesn't like to fly, I was told. That's why you don't see him out here in those days. He didn't really start doing cons out here until 2009 or 10. So I asked Joe, "Is there any way to get in touch with him?" And Joe gave me his email and back and forth, and just started talking with Stan. Great guy. But the first time I actually met him was a surprise. I've always done cons local to me. I never really traveled for him. So in 2010, it was the year me and my wife started dating in March of that year. And for my birthday, she took me to New York Comic Con, which always lands on my birthday, which is awesome because every year I tell my wife, "You watch the kids, I'm going to Comic Con." But she took me there, and hey, Stan's supposed to be there. Let's go meet him. Well, it sounds great in theory when you're new to the circuit and everything, but I get there. As it opens, I'm walking in. For some reason, there's a line around the corner. And I'm assuming that's people that worked there or people got other people inside. There was no chance in hell I was going to meet him. Well, we made friends with people who ended up going closer in the line, and they pulled us up there, and I was like fifth in line at that point, and I got Stan to sign my my Avengers #1, and I have a book that I get everyone I meet to sign. I must have like 500 names in it. That was the first time I met him, and he was a great guy, but it was so hectic at New York, you really can't do much. So when he started doing a circuit, next time I met him was at Philly, and got a little bit more one-on-one time, just shooting the proverbial shit with him, and the guy's actually great. He at his age, what was he? He was in his 90s then in 2010 and 11, and he still had it. I was watching him run around the con, saying hi to all the fellow artists, people, fans. He had security with him. He had members, but he wasn't like he was in the last few days, like the last days of his life. The last year, he was great. The best experience I had with him kind of was somber, but still great. It was Baltimore the following year, like maybe 2012, 2013, when I met him. I was first in line. My wife was awesome. She ran for me, and she's not a nerd in any way, shape, or form like me. She was just doing it for her husband. She ran and got first in line, so I finally caught up. I brought every key book you can imagine, from the first Wolverine. I had a second Avengers, Venom, Punisher, Gambit, and I had them waiting for him. I even had a couple props like my Thor hammer, my Captain America shield. And I'm sitting there. They're about to let everybody in, and he's just behind a cloth. He's lying down, like sleeping. Like head on, like you would in school. And I was like, this is kind of sad. I feel bad. But the second that they said, "Come on in," and it must have tripped in him. He was up and at him. "How are you?" Blah, blah, blah. Being the first person, not the 200th back, I'm sure he had more energy. I was just ecstatic to be there. He signed everything for me. Now, his handler at the time, I don't know if you guys want to get into that. His handler was that, I think his name was Max, who really got into the trouble at the end of his life. Towards the end of Stan's life, with taking advantage of him, doing a couple shady things. But he was kind of rushing you along, but Stan was cool enough to talk to me about the books. He would stop and go, "Oh, I remember when Jack would do this one," or, "Oh, I remember being in the bullpen with this." And it was like my Guardians of the Galaxy 1 and all this other stuff. He's just a great guy all around. I've even had dinner, not with him, I'll say next to him, out of the one Philly con. It was me, my wife, her twin sister, my brother-in-law, my brother, and his wife. We were at Maggiano's right across from the convention center. I don't know, Ron, you might be familiar.
Yep.
And all of a sudden comes walking in. Stan is literally like feet away from me with Lou Ferrigno, Norman Reedus, Linda Blair, and all their handlers.
Wow.
And it was awesome. So I went over. I still have the picture. My wife's twin sister took a picture of us together, and we were talking back and forth. I think I bought one of them him a drink or something like that, and I doubt he drank it at his age. But that was a good experience. Side note to that, the same night we went back to the hotel in the little lobby area, and they're all standing there partying, and I got really toasted with Ray Park, and that's a fun picture too. Next day, he was late to the con because he was just blitzed like we were. And I walked right up. He pulled me up to the front of the line. He was like, "Dude, I had an amazing night last night, but I can't do that again. I'll be done tomorrow." So I'm the reason a lot of people got stiffed on Ray Park that year at Comic-Con.
That's funny.
I love that. Hey, we're going to take a quick break. Really appreciate when we get back, we're going to continue talking with Mark all about comics.
Enjoying Between Two Studs? Be sure to check us out on Instagram. There you'll find us posting all the latest and greatest episodes, and we'll keep you in touch with what we're doing.
And we're back with Mark Stong. He's been telling us all about some of the crazy antics at comic book cons. And one of the questions I think, Mark, that I had as we were taking this break was, we've talked a lot about Marvel and the film universe. I'm curious your take on with that acquisition made by Disney, and I think that was 2009. Beyond film, because that's probably what I'm familiar with. I haven't read comics since probably 2009, any new comics, I should say. How has that acquisition by Disney, how has that impacted Marvel?
Both good and bad. So good financially, it's great. I mean, think about it. You got Disney backing you up. That's that mouse is running everything. Let's face it. But that's just the financial backing Marvel needs, and I think that puts them in a good direction. The one thing it really does too, and this hits home for me. I'm a guy that collects comic books, figurines, statues. I'm a nerd. So when I had two daughters, I was like, oh, okay, I hope they can get into this. There's not really a lot in comics in the days, like the last few years, where you had diversity. That became a huge thing prior to the Disney purchase, and then Disney just expanded on that. Like you have a lot more cartoons with Spider-Gwen, Ms. Marvel, and the best part about him is Ms. Marvel is a Middle Eastern descent, so there's little girls out there that can look up to her. Spider-Gwen, a Spider-Man character that's a girl, that's extremely popular, if not more popular than Spider-Man these days. And there's so much branching out of that. And I think Disney really helped put a big branch out of that. Like they furthered Marvel's plan along. So there's some good aspects to it. And it was interesting. I think a week or two ago, my daughter was in my office looking at the collection. She wanted to hold the Thor hammer. She goes, "Daddy, can I be Thor?" I was like, "Yes, you can." There was a girl Thor named Jane Foster. "Daddy, can I see that movie?" "Not yet. It's coming out." And that actually gave me hope. That was really cool to be able to say to my daughter, where I'm a guy. I never had to think about that. So if you put yourself in someone else's shoes and think, wow, there's nothing you can look up to represent. I mean, look at Miles Morales. If you guys know, that's the new Spider-Man that came out in Into the Spider-Verse.
Yep.
He's going to be live action sooner or later. He is huge right now. And I'm sure any young kids that are of African American descent are so ecstatic that they have a hero they can look up to.
Yeah.
I think it's really cool with diversity. Interesting fact, that first appearance of Miles Morales, which is Ultimate Fallout #4, there's a variant cover. And basically what that means is, let's say you have a regular cover of a comic and a variant. The regular comic has to print maybe, let's say in this instance, 500 regular copies, and you'll get one that looks like this variant cover. That variant at a high grade is now selling for 15 grand.
Ooh.
Do I have it? Yes. Not in that high grade, but it's interesting because you can go get a Amazing Fantasy 15 at like a 1.0 grade for around 20 grand. So it's so cool to see that different things, and that it's still building. And that goes back to my argument earlier of, hey, new collectors versus old collectors. Old collectors will laugh at that new Miles Morales comic and go, why is that even something when you can go get an Amazing Fantasy 15? Well, that's because there's new collectors coming out of different races, cultures, and it's expanding. So Disney, I think, was a huge idea, incredible to blow that out of the water. So the good sides of it. Here's the bad side, in my opinion. Diversity. You have those older fans that, and I've run across this a lot. I've actually lost friends over this, which is sad to say because it's just comics at the end of the day. But for example, Miles Morales, they're getting this much popularity. That makes them mad because my only Spider-Man is Peter Parker. That's all I want to see. And it's foolish. It really is. Just enjoy it. It's a hobby. All right. This is not a way of life, but it is a hobby and it's fun. So that's one bad side to it, because it's also saying with this diversity, every other week you're getting a new issue of something with a new character. This past Wednesday, a new character came out in Taskmaster issue 3, where it was I forget his name, but he's of Taiwanese descent. I'm not going to run out and collect it because I don't care, but I'm sure the newer collectors like, oh, it's a first appearance, just grab them up. And I know they're sold out like everywhere. To me, he's got a Pepsi logo on his chest and looks like Pepsi Man, so I was laughing at it. But that, to me, that's a bad side of it. I feel like it's coming down to hit or miss. Let's make a new character. Just a hit, cool, run with a story. So that's kind of diluting the waters of good writing, in my opinion. So that's one bad aspect, I would say.
So just do me a favor, though. Don't disparage my love of Safe Space and Snowflake, the greatest characters that have ever been created.
They never came out.
I know. I was disappointed. I was going to buy that issue.
And I get it. There's a lot of things I'm not comfortable with it, but I know there's a lot of kids out there that would have made them happy, I'm sure. To me, that was laughable ploy. It really was. The only other bad side to the whole Disney merger for me, I can see some of what they're doing turning into cash grabs, specifically with Disney Plus.
I was going to ask about if there does feel like a little bit of selling out going on to take advantage of, hey, let's milk this for as much as we can.
Well, my point of view is and I don't know if you guys will agree. WandaVision's going on right now. Have you seen it? I'm not going to give any spoilers away, obviously, because it's you got fans watching here. I watched the first 3 episodes, bored out of my mind.
I watched the first episode and I just was like, it felt like I don't know how to describe it. It's like watching like your friend try to do a show where it's like, hey, we're trying to do like something kind of like I Love Lucy, but it's not. And it just kind of left me like, I don't know if it's sad or if I'm supposed to find it funny, and I had trouble with that.
Yeah, I don't know. I grew up watching those on Nick at Night and stuff. It's like, I don't want to see that again. I get what you're going for, and I know all the storylines, so I know what's going to happen for the most part, unless they tweak it. But again, I think a lot of fans were really annoyed that it was, these 3 episodes are annoying and they're dropping it. Well, you got to understand, Disney's a business. They have to keep it a weekly thing. I think if they released this all at once, it would have been fine because people wouldn't have been mad. A lot of people lost interest. A lot of my friends who aren't as into it as I am, they are into the Marvel Universe. And I think they would have kept with it. Whereas I understand on their side, they're not going to release it all at once. They want you to stay signed in with Disney Plus. They learned that with The Mandalorian. Let's face it, that was their big hit. And I love that that's a weekly thing. People are arguing that, you forgot how to watch TV in this binging environment. Not true. I mean, we still have regular TV and cable. I think Ron will attest to that. Sure. And I wait my week to watch whatever I want to watch. Shameless or whatever the shows you're watching. But there's something about streaming that people want it because they want to be able to binge it right then and there. I don't know. That's just my opinion.
For me, I think what I've noticed with streaming is because you can binge watch and watch shows back to back to back, they're able to go a lot deeper with characters because you're able to remember what happened because you watched it literally an hour ago.
Correct.
For me, I always found that there were certain TV shows that if they only aired once a week, they kind of have to water it down for people who didn't see it last week. Right. So yeah. I think that, whether it's comics, whether it's just any type of medium, I think they've been able to really make these characters have so much more depth.
Yeah, no, I agree. What did I just finish streaming? We just watched Cobra Kai, and I'm behind the times on that. I was not a huge Karate Kid fan. It was fun.
Cobra Kai is awesome.
Actually, the show is not bad. It's cheesy. There's so many throwbacks, but it was entertaining, and I'm really now I want to see season 4. But now I'm pissed that it's not out.
Yeah.
So, Mark, I know we spent a lot of time talking about Marvel. I do want to jump across the pond, so to speak, and talk about DC. Kind of what's going on in the DC world right now?
DC is not my specialty, but I do still get Batman issues. If you're asking comics-wise, Batman's hot. They had new characters introduced like Punchline. There's a new one coming out. I don't know her name. I don't even know what her purpose is yet. It's coming out in a few issues. We had Clown Killer come out. We had Ghost Hunter, I think his name has come out. Batman's killing it right now. There is something called Future State that's out. I'm gonna be honest, I'm not huge into DC, and that doesn't resonate in the comics too much with me. But movies wise, I cannot wait till I think it's March 13th for Zack Snyder's Justice League.
Yeah.
Because when we were also talking about the movies we didn't like and stuff, I enjoyed Justice League, but it was a complete farce of any material, anything ever written in different versions. It was, you could tell a studio exec came in and said, this is going to cost too much. Let's cut this out, throw this together and see what happens. And it was garbage. Absolutely was.
Now, for a lot of our listeners, they're probably not too aware of all of the complications that happen with the Zack Snyder Cut, because if I understand things correctly, that was also something where in some ways that was kind of speculated. Like, people were not very happy with the original. They weren't very happy with the movie that came out. And one of the things that happened was there was a lot of the fan base saying, well, this was because Zack Snyder was told how to do it. There's an actual cut that he had that was actually good before Warner Brothers basically cut it up to shreds. So that's where the fan base has kind of come in and really kind of said, hey, we need to actually see this cut. And let me stop, and I will let Mark, you continue with what actually happened with that.
From my knowledge, and you read it all on the sites, probably like you have and everything. One, the studio did come in to take over a lot. I think they felt this was too big a project. Then there's one thing people aren't considering. I give Zack all the credit that he deserves. His child passed away. And that would throw anybody off. I believe it was suicide, which is not a joke, and that's really horrible. So he had to step out, and Josh Whedon came in to finish. And I do blame Josh Whedon for gutting that movie, adding his childish humor, like the booyah from Cyborg, was not originally in there, not supposed to be. But that movie was plagued with a lot. Apparently, there's a lot of inconsistencies on set. No one got along with Josh Whedon. You're hearing all that come out now. Even Gal Gadot came out and said that. Of course, Ray Fisher was really annoyed his character, Cyborg, was cut out of the entire movie. And Cyborg's an amazing character. Like, why would you cut him out? That movie's loosely based on, if you think about it, the New 52 Justice League, and where Cyborg was a key character in defeating Darkseid and sending him back to his home world of Apocalypse. So cutting him out is kind of BS. And the worst part, we didn't even see Darkseid. The Avengers movie was smart enough to know you're setting up this giant 10-year plan. We'll give you just a taste of what he is. That, and you saw Thanos at the end credits. That is one of the smartest moves Marvel ever did, that quick end credit scene. Notice DC doesn't do that. I get it. You don't want to copy, but dude, you got to do something. DC needs to pick up their game with the movies. And I'm tired of, this is my fanboy rage coming out. I'm tired of all the fanboys and girls coming and saying, oh, well, Christopher Nolan's Batman series was amazing. No, it wasn't.
I was actually going to ask that,
It wasn't.
Mark. I was going to say, the Christopher Nolan Batman trilogy, a lot of people consider that the greatest comic book trilogy of all time.
Not in my opinion.
Very overrated in your opinion.
Well, here's the thing. Part 1 was genius in establishing why he has a fear of bats, why he uses that fear. I thought that was actually really creative. Part 2, Heath Ledger. That's all I'm going to say. Heath Ledger. I think Christian Bale's Batman is a joke. I think he is a horrible Batman. I'm not going to go into too many details with that, but the voice thing, I get it. He was told to do it. I like how Justice League saved that by just giving him a voice changer in his costume. Whatever. I was like, all right, that's better. At least you get a muffled version of the voice. Not a swear to me. Like, oh my God, just stop. But the story-wise, I love the Scarecrow in the first one. Ra's al Ghul, that worked out amazingly. Second one, the Joker was phenomenal. But again, his story, Christopher Nolan, I'm not a fan of. He goes too deep. And I am intelligent enough, I think, to get most of his movies. Inception was fun. I didn't get to see Tenet yet. I don't want to hear the excuse, oh, well, Heath Ledger died, so I have to change part 3. No, you went in a completely weird direction. You gave Bruce Wayne a normal, and the Batman would never, that was not Batman. It wasn't. And his part 3 was a horrible end to that trilogy. That's just my opinion.
So for the third one, you're not a big fan of Bane?
Actually, I thought Tom Hardy's Bane was awesome, and Bane is an awesome character. They portrayed him very well. It's just, my whole thing is how Batman was in that. It's years later, he's old. They tried to touch on a storyline of the Dark Knight and failed miserably. Then they tried to pass the cowl off to Dick Grayson. Was that Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character? It's been a while.
I think so.
And that's weird. It's different. I'm not going to knock him for trying something different, but it just didn't work. So seeing Batman sip cappuccino in Italy at the end with Catwoman, that would never happen in a million years. They just did it in the comics. They didn't get married. They were supposed to get married and didn't, and went their different ways. It was bad. I think it was lazy writing to end that trilogy out. If you're going to give me a Batman, the best one, I'm sorry. And it's not because I grew up with him. Michael Keaton. He portrayed the Playboy so much better, I think. The Playboy millionaire, and he knew when to be Batman. I don't know. It had a great style to it and story, and it was fun. Whereas I just think he went too deep, too dark for that Batman series, Christopher Nolan, and I think it just lost its cue at the end.
Yeah, but I think one of those things too that's interesting is every different artist that has a run on Batman definitely kind of has their own view of what they think Batman could be. So, kind of transitioning with that and going back to some of the original source content for a lot of these movies. What's your favorite graphic novel?
I have a few. My favorite graphic novel, and it's going to throw you for a loop probably. I don't know why, because the backstory here, I collected in the 80s and 90s. I really kind of stopped in the 90s because 90s comics were garbage. It was Rob Liefeld, pockets on everything. X-Men, it just became saturated and too much in my opinion. I got back into it with one book. Ultimate Spider-Man came out. And it's not a hugely expensive book. It's not popular. And if anybody wants to jump into it, I'd recommend reading that series. I think it goes from finish to end. It's 160 issues until it spawns off in the other side Ultimate series. But Bendis and Brian Michael Bendis wrote it. Bagley did most of the art, and it was an amazing story. It was the retelling of Spider-Man with today's pop culture, today's references, today's how it feels to be in high school, in the world today. And it was so enjoyable. I literally have both physical copies of it and digital if I'm on the go for it. I absolutely love that series. There's a bunch, though, I'd recommend out there. Walking Dead, for example, amazing series to issue 120. After that, just stopped. Everything just went askew. Like the TV series now is garbage. It's just done. But the first 100 issues up to 100 to 120 were amazing reads. I've read all of them verbatim. Marvel Zombies is actually a lot of fun. There's a corresponding to that, though. Just this past year, DC did a reimagining under Tom Taylor, who's a great writer. He calls it Dead Planet, and it's about kind of the same thing, but there's a antivirus equation that Darkseid's always trying to get. And for some reason, it goes digital, and Cyborg gets infected, which infects the whole world into like zombies. And it's just another take on DC's versions of the zombies, and it was very entertaining. They're really good places to start. Batman Hush was amazing by Jim Lee and Jeff Loeb. Thanos Wins. Anything Donny Cates does right now is gold. He's doing Thor. He did Thanos, which introduced Cosmic Ghost Rider. Silver Surfer. His big claim to fame is Venom and a character named Null. I'm a huge fan of Null. If nobody knows who that is, you may get him in the movies coming up, and I'm really hoping for that. Null is the god of the symbiotes. He basically was here in the void before the universe was created. The Celestials came and started creating the worlds and the planets. Well, he got pissed. He didn't want it to be that way, so he created the symbiotes to fight the Celestials. And you guys remember in Guardians of the Galaxy, the first movie, the head nowhere that they go to? That's actually the head of the Celestial that was killed by Null. Null decapitated him with one swing of this necro sword he created. So they're tying it in slowly. Like the next Thor movie, Blood and Thunder, is going to have a character called Gore in it, Gore the God Butcher.
Okay.
And that's actually the son of Null. So hint, hint, you may be seeing Null as a big villain. So go, if you're a fan and you want value in your comics, go buy Venom #3. I think some of my other favorites are like the Batman New 52, The Court of Owls. You guys may have seen that in Gotham.
Mark, in under 1 minute, tell us who is your favorite villain of all time?
Ooh, that comes with, I'd say right now, what's hot right now and what I'm really enjoying reading. I'd have to go with Batman Who Laughs. I don't know if you guys know that storyline. It came out with Dark Knight's Metal. Picture a universe with Batman defeats the Joker and is forced to actually make the final kill. But in doing so, Joker has a failsafe where when he dies, he actually has, I think it was something like nanobots in his bloodstream that infected Batman with Joker's DNA and his, chemicals that make him Joker. So now you have the Joker's mind mixed with Bruce Wayne's, the most intelligent detective in the world, with the most insane person in the world. And he's met by a god named Barbados to round up all these other versions of Batman that are evil in these dark multiverses. And for example, there's one where Batman steals the Flash's powers in a weird and messed up way. And so you have Red Death is his name, his version of Batman. But anyway, Batman Who Laughs is the mind of it all, and he bands these guys together to defeat the Justice League. I think he's my favorite newer villain to come out of it in years. My favorite villain overall, though, there's a mix. I'm a huge Galactus fan. Not that someone will argue he's not a villain; he's just trying to survive. But that guy is just interesting.
I love that. I do have.
Yeah.
I know Ron and I probably have one final question that we want to ask, and then
Yeah,
we'll
shoot.
kind of let you have an opportunity to kind of tell us what you're up to. For me, I think what I'm really curious about is, in my experience, most people I know who are really in the comics are into a camp. They're either primarily a DC guy or they're primarily a Marvel person. I'm actually really curious for someone like you who have been to a lot of Comic Cons and conventions. You know, are there stereotypes that like you could pick off immediately? Like, oh, that's a DC person, that's a Marvel person. I'd be curious. Like, talk about that.
Besides the T-shirts, pushing that aside, let me think about that. I'd have to say, if you're speaking to people, like nerds at conventions are actually the nicest people in the world. You could stand in line for 3 hours. You'll end up talking to the people next to you. And, oh, did you read this series? Did you talk about this? You can always pick up like, oh, okay, you know the series. But if they miss something, you're like, okay, you're a fair weathered fan, or you could pick up like that. But not really Marvel or DC. I mean, I know I come across as a Marvel guy. I do have a lot of DC too. It's just if you ask me who my favorite are, it's Marvel. I don't think there's really a way to depict, oh, you're just a DC or a Marvel guy at a con. It's just people there to enjoy what they enjoy.
Fair enough. I was curious if there might have even just been like an age group that focus on one or the other. You don't see any particular demographic
Yes.
changes?
Demographic, yeah. I do see a lot of older people are more into DC. Because you think about it, they probably got collections from their dads from earlier on, and at that time it was mostly DC. That's becoming that paradigm's actually shifting now more towards Marvel because those people's collections are becoming, hey, 1960s, this and that. Because everyone who wants to get a first Batman or Superman, that's not happening. And they're from the 40s, the 30s. That's just impossible now. So everyone goes for the next best thing. But that comes down to the whole buying, selling market and flipping.
Tell us what are you doing lately? Like, what are some of the I think before the show we talked a little bit about some of the different side projects that we're working on. Tell us what you're doing.
I actually do have my own little site. I have a selling business off Facebook called Strong Comics with an X. I do sell comics out of there. I do conventions, and I work with a side company known as CBCS. It's just another comic grading company, and I am an authorized witness. So I'll go to these cons, bring these books, and if I get, for example, my Teen Titans 12 is the first appearance of Deathstroke or Slade. I've gotten Marv Wolfman and George Perez before he retired to sign it. Well, I don't need to go to CGC and go, okay, I need your person to come with me and stand next to me and witness all the time. I'm my own witness. I work with them at the cons. I've covered them for bathroom breaks. I don't know how many times and gotten food and helped them out. So I have that benefit where I don't need a third party to sit there with me. And grading these comics, I don't know if you guys know, they grade on a scale of 1 to 10. 10 obviously being near mint or perfect, and 1 being crap. Depending on the issue, because a 1.0 Amazing Fantasy 15 is still friggin' valuable. I do that, but again, cons wrapped up, so there's a lot of private signings. For example, I just had a friend hook me up with, I don't know if you guys know Bill Sienkiewicz. Probably know his work on early Moon Knight in the 80s. He's done Batman, Joker. He's done everyone. Wolverine, X-Men. He's very difficult to get art from, and I got a commission done from him of Moon Knight, and it's amazing. He hooked me up with a good price, and he's such a kind, great guy. But he comes across as very, well, not, he doesn't come off as anything. He's just a great guy, but he's always busy at cons, so people will bypass him sometimes. But he's extremely famous. His art sells for thousands. So Walt Simonson, for example, who did everything you like Thor, was done by either Jack Kirby or Walt Simonson. And Simonson and his wife Louise have been in comics for years. Thor run, they created X Factor. Right now, he has a personal series called through IDW, a company named Ragnarok. And I've been in talk with him. He did a few sketches for me. He's going to do some more for me this year. But that's what I deal with. I collect my signatures. I do flip books. I actually am getting next week a second Amazing Spider-Man 129, which is the first Punisher. And I'll see what I can do with it. See if I can get it signed by what's his name? John Romita Sr., who did the art and helped design. And let me see, on my one here, I already have it signed. I can't see it from here, but the 2 people that are still alive that worked on it are pretty old, so I'll try to get them to. Oh, Jerry Conway, the person who wrote and created the Punisher, because that book's always been high priced, but it also has controversy right now with the whole political background. But I'm not going to get into that. But yeah, that's basically what I'm doing. If I'm not working and taking care of kids, I'm upping my collection, sorting and seeing what I could flip, or just for my own personal stuff, see what I want to keep and get graded and work on it.
Very cool. So I know we're actually going to probably have to kind of wrap things up. And I know that you've honestly, I'm thankful. I've got you and I've got another friend who has definitely steered me right in the world of comics for what to check out. What would you suggest to our listeners, especially somebody who maybe is completely new to comics, but maybe has watched a few movies and said, boy, maybe I should check out one of those trade paperback books or something of that nature?
Well, first, like I said, I'd ask them what realm or what characters interest them. Like, if they tell me Spider-Man, I'm going to tell them Ultimate Spider-Man. If they say, whatever, I like the cosmic stuff, I'm going to tell them to read Cates's Thanos Ends run, or any of the Venom he's done. It has been great. Obviously, there's the staples of V for Vendetta and Watchmen by Alan Moore. I found Watchmen, it's not a hard read. It's just you got to have the time to dedicate, because that thing can get in depth.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people hated the movie. I absolutely loved it. And I liked it better with the ending than the comics. They are different. Although V for Vendetta, I'm a huge fan of. I thought V for Vendetta was amazing, both book and movie. And David Lloyd, the artist, that doesn't get enough credit. So I would recommend those. Even if you want to be a young child who's asking me, I would say, okay, pick up X-23's Innocence Lost. It's kind of her origin story. It's only 6 issues. It's great. Again, you can't go wrong with Spider-Man. DC-wise, everyone gravitates to Batman. I kind of do too, but I'm not. Batman to me, if you're going to give me that comic, I'd rather just go with Moon Knight. Moon Knight's a little bit more badass in my opinion. And one last note, I'm a huge fan of Null, as I said earlier. He's a crazy villain, and if you really want to get into something out there, read Cates's run on Venom. That's a great time.
Very cool. All right. Well, I think we're going to wrap things up. Mark, it's been a pleasure having you on. Thank you so much, especially during these times with COVID. It's definitely been a good time to kind of roll up, have a few comic books to read through, enjoy a good movie or two. And I'll give one last plug. I know this was something that you actually suggested to me for anybody who might be interested, but The Immortal Hulk was something that you told me to check out, and very, very good pick there for anybody that's interested. But thanks again for coming on, and we appreciate you coming, and we'll have you back sometime soon. Thank you again,
no
Mark.
worries. Take care, guys.
Thank you, Mark.